The Timeline is a Blue Wire podcast. Welcome to the Timeline of Phoenix Suns podcast. My name is Mike, back with Sam. How you doing, Sam?
I'm doing well. Happy December 15th to everyone. Happy hunting season officially. It's a very important holiday here in the NBA community, by which, you know, many of us have been speculating on trades and such for months and months, and now finally a lot is possible starting from this date. So, you know, I know definitely we have a lot of listeners who are kind of most interested in our segments about potential trades and then formulating their own trades. And, you know, we're going to cover some of that stuff in this episode, obviously based on news that broke in the past week. But just generally speaking, a lot of you out there go to the Spotrac trade machine created by Keith Smith. Well, I don't know if it was created by Keith Smith, but with the help of Keith Smith. I just mean I don't know if he coded it himself. It's the best tool on the internet. If you're interested in trades right now, December 15th, up until the February trade deadline, that's where you should go. It's the best tool online for that. And otherwise, Suns won a couple games, so I'm doing pretty good.
Yeah, since the last time we recorded, a player was traded, or multiple players, I guess technically, were traded. So there has been a trade, which we'll talk about. And then, of course, a massive trade rumor that now includes the Phoenix Suns in Jimmy Butler, which we will be talking about on this episode as well, since we haven't had a chance to talk about that on this feed yet. And I think there's been some more interesting reporting on that done in the last few days as well. So we're going to get to that. First, let's talk about how they've been playing lately. There's been a few games. I mean, the big story for the Suns, as it always seems to be, is Kevin Durant is now back again. This feels like another episode where we're talking about that to start the episode. He comes back. Jimmy Butler. I'm already looking into the future. Bradley Beal is not back. He is sitting the last few games with a, swelling in his knee, I guess is what they're saying. It is
knee swelling. That's what it is. Yep.
Yeah.
That's what the report says.
2 games with Kevin Durant, 2 wins with Kevin Durant. This team continues to win when KD plays and lose when he does not play. I think, what are they up to now? 12-2, 13-2 with Kevin Durant?
I don't know. Either 12-2 or 13.
They've only lost twice.
Yes.
With Kevin Durant so far this season, which is pretty remarkable, I think, for them to be that good when he plays and just that bad when he doesn't. And he has played 15 games, so 13-2 so far with Kevin Durant. It's just nuts.
Yeah, so a weird weekend, right? Because I think you can kind of sense in the fan base right now, like, you know, this unease that's natural. If people were maybe hoping that they would go into a weekend against the Utah Jazz and the Portland Trail Blazers, who are the 2 teams they played, and would give us like a 40-point statement win blowout, we did not receive that. And so, you know, I think ultimately it's just more important that you kind of took care of business. You got the win. Kevin Durant is back. Like, there's nothing to feel bad about, even though these were a couple of wins by 8 or 9 points. 2 really unique wins kind of in the way that they happen. We'll start with that game against Utah, where both teams shot like 60% from deep. Absolutely no defense was played. Actually, the Suns here, they shot 49% from deep. Utah shot 56%, 22 of 39 as a team. And in a game where Kevin Durant played well, Devin Booker played well, every role player, Yusuf Nurkic played well, every role player played well, where I think we're going to talk about a lot of those guys at large in this episode. But, like, you know, a game where normally you have that ease of putting a defense into rotation, you know, kind of just like the offensive system that Bud is hoping for, everything clicking for them. A game like that, you're expecting to win by 30 points. And it was just an 8-point game because Utah made every single three, including of a lot of really, really difficult shots in terms of the shot quality. Looking at guys like Jordan Clarkson, who made a bunch of threes off the bench, or
is sub 30% on his 3-point percentage so far this season. Just makes every single one against the Suns,
but not,
for some reason.
Not against the Suns. Or John Collins having a really good game. Laurie Markkinen obviously is there. So, Walker Kessler making a couple of wide open threes at the beginning of the game. That was a funny Nurkic game. I don't know if we're going to talk anymore about it, but just kind of the contrasts with which he plays sometimes. But ultimately, they're able to pull it out. Then they go into Portland. They pull out another one. DeAndre Ayton did not play in that game either. I think he has yet to play a regular season game against the Suns in Phoenix.
I think maybe one game, but yeah.
I think it was a preseason game, right?
Possibly. I don't remember the exact one, but yeah.
Well, they got it. 2-0. Not the stiffest competition. As we look forward in the schedule, it's going to continue to not be the stiffest competition. Their next couple games are against, and again, by the way, we have another weird gap in the schedule. I understand the NBA Cup needs to happen, and I actually do enjoy the NBA Cup, and I've been enjoying the games, but this is going to be the third 5+ day break for the Suns that we've had in a few weeks, and it's just really becoming kind of difficult to program content around, to be, kind of selfish here. But as we look forward later in the week, we've got the Pacers and the Pistons as the next two games. So it's going to continue to be these games where how much do you learn from it in a grand sense of like, oh, now we know we can beat the Thunder or the Rockets or the Grizzlies or any of these other top teams in the Western Conference right now. I don't know that you can say that, but you just need to generate some momentum, get some confidence for the right guys, and take care of business, and they've been able to do that, broadly speaking.
Yeah, it's weird because, yes, they won, right? They won 2 in a row once Kevin Durant got back, but they lost, 3 or 4 in a row, whatever, before that, without KD. And they're 13-2 when KD plays, and yet the fan base is totally enraptured with trade rumors for Jimmy Butler. Like, they're still looking at this team that has won almost every single game that their best player has played so far this year. And yet they still want to make moves. And it makes total sense, I think, because this team has won games that they just don't win a lot of them very convincingly so far this season. They're awful when KD does not play. One of the worst teams in the NBA in most of those metrics when you look at the numbers when he does not play. And when he does play, even though there's a lot of wins, there's just not a lot of evidence that they're playing as one of the best teams in the NBA, even in those games. But they are winning, which I think is sort of a good place to be with a new system, a new coach, and a lot of not consistent play as healthy, which even in the last 2 wins against Portland and Utah, Bradley Beal was not in those games. So even in those games, they were not currently healthy. But like they do have the ability of building on that. They do have the ability of getting better. But I do think it does make a lot of sense that the fan base is still kind of looking forward and going, how can they improve player-wise? Where are the trades? And this is what we do, right? Every week. We I don't know how many fake trades we've pitched in the last few months, 50, maybe over the last few months. So it's definitely something we do as well. But just to get into how the games have gone a little bit before we even talk about trades, I want to start with just Devin Booker in the last 2 games, 34 points against Utah. He plays really well in Utah, 28 points against Portland. In the Utah game, he had 34 points, 8 assists. In the Portland game, KD really struggled in the first 3 quarters, and the entire offense was kind of predicated around what Devin Booker was doing in that game, where he had 28 points and 5 assists. Just continuing his playmaking at a really good rate. I think he's still at his lowest turnover per game. Let me double check that.
Of his career?
Since his rookie year, which is kind of crazy if you look at the assists. Yeah, his rookie year, he had 2.1 turnovers a game, but he was playing... If you look at turnover rate, it's going to be the lowest of his career, but he was playing a lot less minutes in his rookie year, so of course, less opportunities for turnovers. Continuing the playmaking, the scoring is starting to pick up a little bit. He's looked a lot better when he's taken shots in the last few games. And look, we're asking for it in the last episode. We just need to see him stack a few good games on top of each other. There's 2 good games now. He just has to build on that as we go forward.
Yeah, the 3-point percentage has largely normalized too. I actually wanted to ask you about this because, Book is shooting 35% from deep on obviously a career high. A lot has been made of how he's taking a career high 8 threes per game. It's 2 more threes than he was taking in the last couple of seasons per game.
Yeah.
But I feel like a lot has been made of basically our Booker's early season struggles because of Bud sort of forcing him to play in this way, which to me always felt kind of bogus as a criticism. But, of course, I couldn't deny that Booker had been struggling for the first 20, 25 games. So for me, to see him kind of get right again in the past couple of games and more broadly speaking, just in the past couple of weeks, feels like a little bit of vindication to where, I feel like we're trending towards a place where we can finally say clear as day, like it's not the fact that he's taking more threes that led to his struggles. But what do you kind of think of, that concept in general, that Booker's struggles were explicitly tied to what his shot chart may or may not look like?
I think it's a little bit hyperbolic, but I think it's probably a little bit true in some sense. But one thing I will say on that, though, is he's shooting 7.9 3-point attempts per game, right? You talked about it, 8 3-point attempts. He's also shot over 7 per game 2 other times in his career. Both of those times that he shot over 7 3-pointers a game were his 2 highest percentages from 3 in his career. So in 21-22, he shot 7 a game, and he made 38% of those, which is his highest. And the exact same percentage was in 17-18 when he shot 7.1 per game, and he shot 38% that year. So, like, volume for him has usually correlated to actually better shooting over the course of his career. So there's no real connection to that. I think that you can look at historically and say that if he shoots more, he actually misses more. But I do think he has shot more shots, particularly in transition from 3, that he would not have shot previously, that maybe there is some level of getting used to that kind of shot built into his game this year that I don't think will necessarily correlate to him playing poorly throughout an entire season. But the idea of an adjustment period at the beginning of the season, we're about a quarter of the way through the season, the first quarter of the way through the season, a little over that. I could see that being something that's impacting his game overall. I wouldn't doubt it. I just don't think it's something I think it's something he can adjust to, I guess, and get better at over time.
Look, maybe there's a little bit of it. I think, we've just seen him deal with a couple of tweaks in terms of injuries and, various things early on this season that I think are more likely to be the things that affected him, more so than like Bud is asking him to take 1 more 3 per game or 2 more threes per game.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, the other thing I look at is just like he's still getting to the free throw line, right? Like it would be concerning to me if he, in fact, he's getting to the free throw line more than he was in previous seasons. We've seen a lot of games from Book, including some recently, where he's getting 10, 12, 13 free throw attempts per game, and he's shooting 90% this season, so a really good line from the stripe, or a really good rate from the stripe. It would be concerning to me if he was forcing threes and the other side of the equation was that he was taking away the easy stuff, right? But it doesn't feel to me, honestly, like that's really the case. So I continue to not be worried about Book. Obviously, it hasn't been his best start to a season. Arguably, it's been his worst start to a season that we've seen in quite some time. But I think we're moving along in the right direction, and he's going to be just fine. The guys who have been, I think, really, we need to shower some praise on them, are some of these role players. In particular, I've got 3 guys here where I'd like to just tell you their December stats. Tyus Jones, Royce O'Neal, Grayson Allen are kicking ass as a group in the month of December. And I know this started with, the month of December, there's been like 6 or 7 games now that started out with a few losses, right? Because they were playing without KD, and maybe that leads to some inflated scoring numbers too. But here are just the numbers for this unit, these guys in the month of December. Tyus Jones is averaging 17 points, 6 assists per game in December, 35 assists to 5 turnovers in total, so maintaining his 7-to-1 assist-to-turnover ratio. 75% true shooting. That's unheard of. 57% on threes. He is automatic from the corners at this point.
It's crazy.
Automatic. Like, actually phenomenal. His floater has been awesome. We saw it again a bunch yesterday in the game against Portland. I think he finished 8 for 9 from the field in that game. Then we move on to Royce O'Neal, who just had, I should have looked this up, I want to say maybe the best scoring week or the best scoring stretch of his career.
Last 3 games, 15.3 points per game for Royce O'Neal. So I have that in front of me here.
16.3 in the entire month of December.
Yeah.
16.3 points, 6 rebounds, 2.3 assists, 72% true shooting. Also automatic from the corner. Him and Tyus both cannot miss threes right now. And then the other guy, just to give a shout out to Grayson Allen, who I think is really important to talk about him because we need to refer to it in
bad.
Exactly.
Yeah.
We need to refer to it in equal measure as kind of the criticism that we levied against him at the beginning of the season. And kind of everyone and their grandma pointing out the fact that he was really struggling and saying maybe did he put on too much weight. Well, now in the month of December, Grayson's averaging 12 points, 3.5 rebounds, 3.7 assists, over a 4-to-1 assist to turnover ratio for him, 68% true shooting, also super, super efficient. His overall 3-point percentage on the season is back up to 39%, like not too far off where it was last season. Or I mean, last season was really, really good, but just like he's basically back up to 40% shooting on the season again.
Yep.
He's hitting some really deep ones. I think he's still struggled as a finisher throughout the season, and I do think
can't really score under the arc so far this season in general. Yeah,
and I do think there are still like legitimate questions. If you want to ask, like, did Grayson adding 20 pounds or whatever it was actually make him a better defender? Maybe not. I think there's there's a legitimate question there, but he's scoring, he's shooting well, he's passing the ball well right now at least, and he deserves some credit for that because really these guys, if anything, it makes you kind of wonder about why. Obviously, the games without KD are one thing, right? That makes sense why they're losing. But if you can get games where Devin Booker looks good and Kevin Durant is back and these 3 guys are playing like that and you're still only winning by, say, 8 to 10 points against kind of iffy teams, it does make you kind of look at the rest of the roster and then once again put on your analytical hat and say, okay, what's going on here? Because these role players are playing like as good as they possibly can right now.
Offensively. Yes. I agree with that. Like, especially Tyus Jones, I think, has been just remarkable in this recent stretch. The last 3 games for Tyus Jones, he's basically averaging 20 points a game and 7 assists. Like a starting point guard averaging 20 and 7, even if a week, is just really impressive for the Suns, especially on a minimum contract, which is currently what Tyus Jones is on for the Suns. And in that time, he's shooting 62% from the field and 72% from 3. 3 games, right? But still, that's just an absurd stretch by him. And I think it's nice when he scores in particular because the defense is going to be soft on him, especially if there's 2 stars playing. If Kevin Durant and Devin Booker are playing, who played the first 2 games with him, or Devin Booker and Bradley Beal, which was game 1 in that 3-game stretch, playing together, it's usually the smallest guy. They're trying to hide defenders, essentially, on Tyus. And if he can work magic in that pick and roll, especially without a rim runner, like to find the space to get that floater off where they're not necessarily scared of a lob to anyone on the Suns outside of Oso Ighodaro, it's just really impressive. Just tiny little spaces to score. He's finding ways to do it just over and over and over again. And they need him to. Like, they really, really need him to. It's necessary.
So I'm sure you heard, because we did a playback for the Portland game last night, and we kind of both laughed about this. EJ making a comment where he said, a lot of people talk about Tyus Jones as he would be the best backup point guard in the league or whatever. We need to start talking about him as one of the best. I'm paraphrasing, obviously.
Yeah.
As one of the best starting point guards in the league. Obviously hyperbolic, obviously not true. However, what's kind of funny to me is, we started having this conversation on the stream of like, well, Tyus, we go into the season definitely thinking about him as just like not a real starter, right? Like not really, like yes, he's starting because they had to offer him that position, but he's maybe the worst starting point guard in the league. And now I do think he's creeping up the rankings like a little bit, right? Like there are defensive concerns. If you pull up the advanced stats right now, Mike, and just like look at he is 51st in the NBA in Basketball References BPM. There are certain point guards where he ranks above in that stat.
But that includes playing games, right? I'm sure. Yeah.
No,
but yes.
BPM is the one that VORP is the one that includes playing games.
Oh,
BPM
okay,
doesn't.
that's right.
BPM is per minute. Here are a couple guys he's better than. First of all, better than Chris Paul in this stat. I think that's, kind of speaks to we built him in the aggregate.
Yeah,
which maybe
right.
we didn't even. Maybe we just replaced him 1-for-1.
Yeah.
Higher BPM than De'Aaron Fox. How about
crazy.
that?
Yeah.
There's a couple other guys
Fox
on this.
has been shooting really poorly this season, but yeah.
Let me see if I could find anyone else on this list. Jalen Suggs?
It's tough because, there's just a lot of really good point guards.
Drew Holiday?
Yeah, then that shows a problem with
So,
BPM. I'm sorry to say.
Here's the thing. I'm not saying that any of this is true. Obviously, Tyus Jones is not better than De'Aaron Fox.
Yeah.
But it does speak to kind of when you have a guy who doesn't make mistakes, doesn't turn the ball over, and also now all of a sudden is shooting damn near 50% from deep. I'm sorry, but that's a good player. That's a really good player.
You could make the question. You could ask the question: has he been better than Bradley Beal this season?
I think you absolutely could make a case that Tyus Jones has been the Suns' third best player this season. Yeah.
At least offensively. And Bradley Beal deserves time to get healthy and play better. But Tyus Jones, I think, has just been more consistent and he's played more. And those things matter over the course of a season. Yes, there's defensive concerns. We had a conversation about defense on our last episode, so we're not going to rehash all of that now. But it's just not looked good. There's just times where they can't stop guys, particularly at the rim. I will give credit, since we're giving credit to role players, to Yusuf Nurkic in the last 2 games. He's had really good stretches defensively in the last 2 games and rebounding. And, it came at a time where they just looked so small without him for the previous few games where he was out. So he came in and he was just big. And there's something he's always going to be good at is being huge. So just being out there and being huge. Although Klingon makes him look small. Yeah. Donovan Klingon, that guy's massive for the Portland Trailblazers. But yes.
Yeah, look,
he got a few blocks. He was a little more active defensively in the last 2 games, maybe because his ankles are feeling better. And offensively, it's going to be trick or treat, right? There are times where he'll be fine. There's times where he'll be just absolutely awful. Including stretches within the same game.
He gives
right?
and he takes. I mean, literally, I think it's important to praise Nurk when he plays well too. It's just important to be fair, right? I don't hate the guy. He did also come in the Portland game in the second half and
the first stretch of the third quarter.
They
was
gave
awful,
up a 12-0 run, literally because of his turnovers, and So then he has a really good fourth quarter, and he kind of makes up for it. But I don't feel the desire nor the need to go out of my way to congratulate him for being a net zero. Right? I feel
it won't work against good teams. Yeah.
Both of the last 2 games to me, Nurk has been basically a net zero, which means that he's had some really good stretches and some really bad stretches, and it's evened out. If that's the best you can say about him, and we're at game number 25, maybe not great. Maybe not exactly convincing me that we don't need to move him for an upgrade. And in February, I just posted a stat, obviously, on Twitter today. I know you saw this thread, where the Suns are the only team in the NBA right now that takes more shots in the paint, but not the restricted area. So that 4 to 7 foot range, than actual layups or dunks in the restricted area. They're the only team that takes more shots just outside that range than the layups and dunks. And there's a few reasons for that. As I said on Twitter, obviously Tyus Jones plays a big role in that. He takes a lot of those floaters. Guys like Oso Agudaro, Royce O'Neal. This is just a floater-heavy team, for better or worse. Some of these guys, I dislike that shot less than others, particularly in Tyus's case. I think Tyus has, much like, some sort of species of animal, has evolved a defense mechanism that if you're 6'1" and you want to be in the NBA, you take floaters, right? That's just what you have to do, because if you get
the only way to get it over the giant guys that are in front of you.
Exactly. If you get any closer to the basket, that's getting swatted into the stratosphere. So it's if you're Tyus Jones and you're taking a floater that's, instead of the 80% layup or whatever, okay, I get it. You have to do that. If you're Yusuf Nurkic, and this happened last night against Portland, and you're running a one-on-one post-up because a play broke down at Donovan Klingon, who is listed at 280 pounds and 30 pounds heavier than you, and you think you can just go over the top of him with a post hook? I'm sorry, but that's the stuff that we just have to entirely cut out of the offense because we know it doesn't work. We know it doesn't work. And so I feel like Nurk is still perpetuating a kind of a lot of that junk that we still see in the Suns offense, right? Like there's still a lot of this stuff where it's just whether, you know, you need to make him feel happy and included, or just like, you know, guys don't look at him. Like Booker will get a screen from him and then just not look at him because he doesn't trust him and knows he can't catch the lob. You still need a solution for that, whether it's internal or external. I don't care if he played a couple of good quarters. I'm sorry. Like the problem is still there.
You want to talk about a guy who gets 5 shots in the restricted area per game?
Yeah, let's go for it.
That player's name is, of course, Jimmy Butler, who is currently in trade rumors. Now, this was originally reported by Shams Charania. Shams Charania said that Jimmy Butler was... there was deals potentially available there. The Heat are willing to trade him. There's some trade discussions happening now. Trade season is, officially kind of opens up on December 15th, as we talked about on our last episode. It's starting now. Jimmy Butler was the first star player and possibly the only, unless you consider Brandon Ingram to be a star. Maybe Zion, I guess, could be in trade rumors soon.
He is, yeah.
But say. Right now, for sure, Jimmy Butler. There was an initial list of teams that Jimmy Butler was willing to go to, reported by Shams Charania, and then the Phoenix Suns were added to that list a few hours later as a team that Jimmy Butler was interested in going to. That has been sort of refuted by Jimmy Butler's agent. And then, of course, Shams Charania doubled down and said, no, this reporting is accurate. And since then, we've also gotten more reporting on that from, of course, Gambo, who said, I'll go as far as saying the Suns are Jimmy Butler's number 1 team that he's interested in, which Gambo, we're always fair to him here, usually right about stuff. He doesn't really report stuff, at least on Twitter. I don't have to listen to the radio show, but at least on Twitter, he's pretty much right with all of the things he's posted. Rarely wrong. And we've had other stuff since then that I do want to talk about. But where we stand currently, well, actually, another thing, Windy on his podcast, Brian Windhorst, talked a lot about that, which I'm going to get into some of the details of stuff he said as we go through this conversation. But the first thing he said that I think has not been reported in full detail is, I can say with certainty, the Phoenix Suns are interested in Jimmy Butler. So now we know that there's interest, at least reported interest on both sides. The Phoenix Suns are interested in Jimmy Butler. Jimmy Butler, according to Gambo, the Phoenix Suns are his number 1 team. He had orange cornrows. He wore Phoenix Suns related colored shoes in his last game. There seems to be smoke there.
If there's one thing we know about Jimmy, it's that he likes to put on a show, okay? So his name's in these rumors. He's not dumb. He knows. And whether there's interest or not, frankly, I don't think the fact that Jimmy is like wearing Suns-themed shoes and dyeing his cornrows orange can even be taken as like a statement of fact about his interest. It's just Jimmy being a troll. That's Jimmy being Jimmy. He loves to do that. It is funny, though. It like when I saw that, I did have to laugh.
It's exactly right. It's just him. It's exactly what he would do in this scenario. So of that.
He's an agent of chaos.
It's part of what makes him fun. Okay, so all Suns fans are sort of probably relatively caught up on this. The issues with this is that the only way the Suns would be interested, of course, is if they could trade Bradley Beal for him. Bradley Beal is a player with a no trade clause currently, and he can waive or deny or block any trade that the Suns work out with him involved. So essentially you have to convince him to go. You have to convince Miami to want Bradley Beal, who is possibly concerned about their future books as far as money goes. So that could be something that maybe they're not interested in doing just based on his contract alone. And then, of course, Jimmy Butler has to be convinced to come to the Suns and then hopefully sign an extension, because Jimmy Butler is very publicly saying that he wants to not pick up his player option for next year, which is like $50 million. So you try to extend him for a few years. I think you can extend him up to 2 years, $112 million approximately. So $56 million a year for Jimmy Butler if you do get him. A lot of stuff there. Now, I think the hardest part about all of this would be convincing Miami to take Beal. I think that's the biggest hurdle that we have currently in here. Miami seems to want a player that they could at least try to compete with. They still have Spoelstra, right? They're not going to give him a complete rebuild. I mean, they still have Bam. They still have Hero. Like, they definitely have players. Hero having a great season, by the way, who plays the same position as Bradley Beal. But having a great season for them so far. I have a couple of questions for you. We talked about this on our Patreon episode. We both love Jimmy Butler. Like, we'll start there for those of you who have missed that. We all understand how much better of a fit Jimmy Butler is on the team than Bradley Beal, right? We're on the same page when it comes to that.
Yeah,
Sam, right?
It's just to quickly rehash what we said on Patreon. I mean, we do both love Jimmy Butler. I think, we recognize, and I think both of us would have probably different answers to this, right? To an extent. Jimmy Butler comes with a cost, given that he is soon to be 36 years old.
Yeah.
So I like for
plays like 55 games a season.
Exactly.
Just like Brad.
Just like Bradley Beal. I
Yeah.
know. But I can only speak for myself here. I don't know how you feel about it exactly, but I obviously understand that Jimmy would make the Suns much better in the short term. But if we're talking about constructing a trade for him that suits both parties and isn't just the Suns kind of completely punting on their future, there's only a certain amount that I would be comfortable with. The other point that
Perfect.
The other thing
That's
that
I want to go.
I just quickly want to touch on, because I can't remember if you mentioned it. Did you mention the other suitors here? You mentioned Phoenix.
I didn't mention the names of the teams. No, but yeah, go ahead.
The other three teams: Golden State, Dallas, Houston. I don't know how deep you want to go into any of those. I think they're kind of all interesting for different reasons.
I can touch on.
We can get to those.
Well, I'll say this. Both Golden State and Dallas, it's really complicated for them to get deals done. And so I think both of those teams, it's possible, but it becomes really complicated and you have to give up a lot. Houston has the most assets here, and if they want to go pick route, if they're willing to do it, I don't know how interested Houston is with him. They have all of our picks, the Suns picks, because they traded for those from Brooklyn. So they have the ability of sending a lot of those out.
Yeah,
so
let's be honest. Houston's in a relatively low stakes position among all of, like, Dallas feels the heat a little bit. Golden State and Phoenix feel the heat a lot because they've got this sort of shortened windows of Kevin Durant and Steph Curry respectively. Houston's on the up and up, and they're currently the second, third seed in the Western Conference, and they've got a lot of young players.
Yeah.
So they do not, in my opinion, need Jimmy Butler, but maybe if they feel that he could push them over the top, it's something they could consider.
But even they have like salary issues when it comes to this, in that they don't have any big salaries to send in a trade. So they'd have to aggregate a whole bunch of guys or get rid of Fred VanVleet, which maybe they'd be willing to do. But I think if you're going to add Butler to a team, you probably want to keep the veteran who's won a championship before. Just a guess. I don't really know. Maybe they're willing to get rid of Fred VanVleet, but that's probably their most
it's sort of
effective offensive player right now.
It's sort of the same issue with Dallas if you look at their roster sheet. So, Houston has Fred VanVleet, who makes $40 million. So that could make it relatively easy if they were willing to. Dallas does not have a player like that on their salary cap. Obviously they have Luka and Kyrie. They're not trading those guys for Jimmy. And so they would have to get rid of Clay at $15 million. And maybe PJ Washington, another 15-ish million. But it's like, at that point, how much better are you getting? Like, PJ Washington's been really good for them. Clay is that veteran who's won championships, provides a lot of spacing to what they do. There's an associated cost for all of these franchises that makes it really difficult, I think, at a certain point for all of them, Suns included, to decide, is this really worth it? Because, again, Jimmy's good, and in the playoffs, he turns into a different beast. Like, the stats speak for themselves, but he's going to be 36.
Yeah.
And frankly, this is not trading for 35-year-old Kevin Durant, which the Suns already did. Jimmy Butler's really good. He's not Kevin Durant, right? So
Kevin Durant's a freak.
Kevin Durant is
good he is.
Kevin
right
Durant is one of one, right? And Jimmy Butler, you're good. Sorry, but you might even get that contract that you want if you opt out this summer. But you're not Kevin Durant. So I think it's a difficult conversation for kind of any ownership group or any general manager to have, and for these front offices to talk themselves into.
Okay, so I think we have to talk about if the deal as it currently stands would not work as a 1-for-1 trade, which, there would be a little bit of cap shenanigans involved in order to make it work, but essentially a 1-for-1 trade as Beal for Butler. If that does not work for the Miami Heat, if they just say, nope, we're not going to do that, we don't want a player with a no-trade clause, because there's another version of this where Bradley Beal is willing to get rid of his no-trade clause in order to go to Miami, that would imply a really intense interest that Bradley Beal has in Miami, which he has been tied to in the past, and he has said that he wants to play there in the past, supposedly. It's been reported. So, there's something there, if you want to point to that. But if there is a world where the Suns have to sweeten the deal for Miami in order to make the trade more feasible for them, that's, I think, where this conversation starts to get interesting and actually complicated, and my feelings start to get a little bit different, and I'm not even sure where I stand yet. Now, on the Patreon podcast, and we'll reiterate that here, I asked you the question is, would you be willing to trade 2031 with Bradley Beal in order to get Jimmy Butler back here? And we both agreed that we would probably do that.
It's the cost of doing business. I don't enjoy that. We've backed ourselves into a corner, and I don't like that. But yeah, I'd do it.
I think it's, no matter what you do, if you start attaching assets to Beal, you have to extend him. Like, you cannot let him get to free agency. There has to be some agent shenanigans in here to make sure that as soon as he gets here, you extend him for 2 years so that you have him for at least 3 years. Because if you start sending out picks and other assets along with Beal, and then he's just a free agent at the end of the year, yes, you got off that Bradley Beal contract. Yes, you got off that no trade clause. But now you have a disaster team with not a lot of ways to improve because you've used all your assets and you no longer have 3 stars. So
yeah, I mean, you would no longer be a second apron team, right? And maybe if Jimmy walks, this is what I'm a little bit iffy about. Do they get out of the first apron too, or just the second apron? Do you know?
I'm not sure. We'd have to look at the future.
Need to
There's probably ways to get out of the second apron at that point.
I need to double check that, but the point being, if Jimmy walks, first of all, yeah, if you trade assets, then you feel really crummy about that, and also your avenues to improve beyond having a team that still features Kevin Durant and Devin Booker, like maybe you have a full mid-level exception now. How far is that going to get you? I don't know. Yeah. So it's going to be tough.
Well, you're going to hate this because there's more questions I have for you here.
Go for it.
Ryan Dunn.
What about him?
Would you be willing?
No.
To give them Ryan Dunn with Bradley Beal.
So what's the trade? Bradley Beal, Ryan Dunn, and
2031?
No.
Yeah. Essentially, if the Houston Rockets were telling them, we'll give you players plus two good first-round picks,
then Houston can have them. I don't care.
Are you sure?
Yeah.
Now, what is your justification?
Honestly,
I'm not.
My justification for that is that I like having fun watching these players. I like thinking about the potential of the future, and I don't want to lock ourselves into exclusively a core of these 36-year-old bums. Sorry, Jimmy, you're he's not a bum, but I can just see it so clearly in my head, Mike. You make that trade, you get rid of Ryan Dunn, he becomes
awesome in Miami.
He's awesome in Miami.
He starts shooting 40% from 3 consistently. Yeah,
you've got an old ass team that gets swept by OKC in the second round, and then what?
I know what you mean.
I'm sorry. I'm not giving up Ryan Dunn. And look, here's the other side of the equation, right? Because I'm not irrational. I understand it's also easy to get high in your own supply and kind of, you draft a guy and you sniff your own farts a little bit too long, and suddenly you're the Golden State Warriors who aren't willing to trade Jonathan Kuminga or Brandon Pajemski 2 years ago when they probably should have, right? And those guys were worth a lot more than they are now. Now, if we're talking about how is Golden State going to make a move, they've got these guys who are kind of former prospects that aren't worth that much anymore, and that could be the Suns in the future with Ryan Dunn and Oso Ighodaro if those guys don't live up to what we're hoping that they could be. For me, I'm willing to go out on a limb and say Ryan Dunn's going to be better than Pajemski, who's having a horrible season. I'm going to make the bet on his work ethic and just say that he's going to get better. and that eventually somewhere down the line there's going to be a little bit of self-creation in his game, even if there's not a lot. His defensive potential, if he packs on some more strength,
and continues to make threes, which he's not really right now, but I think there's some.
He has confidence. He's shooting 32%. That's enough for me, man. I'm. We've talked about it multiple times this season. Just watching Ryan Dunn and Oso be smart players, kind of like with this maturity beyond their years in year one. Even in the games where the Suns lose right now, it gives fans something to hope for. And just if they lock themselves into a future like they kind of did a couple years ago where, okay, now you have Jimmy and you've got KD and you've got Book and your bench is going to be basically the 2024 version of Terrence Ross and Landry Shamet again. And there's just nothing there. There's just nothing there. You're locked in. I'm completely uncomfortable with that possibility. Sorry. It's a non-starter.
Okay, so do you feel the same way about Oso Ighodaro?
Yes.
Okay, so that's a second-round pick that you're unwilling to trade for Jimmy
understand
Butler.
Jimmy is good, but I just don't like him that much. You can have a different opinion than me. That's fine. Would you do Ryan Dunn?
I think that if I were James Jones, I would either trade 2031 or Ryan Dunn, I think. Yeah. But I don't think I would be willing to go for both. I think that's where the line gets a little bit blurry to me. And I think there is a world, by the way, where Matt Ishbia would just give him all of those things. Probably not Oso and Ryan Dunn, but a combination of Oso or Ryan Dunn, 2031 and Bradley Beal.
If that happens, then
because there's a world where Bradley Beal plays 30 games a season for the next few seasons, and the Suns are just not good.
There's also a world
here, and Kevin Durant no longer wants to play on the Suns.
There's also a world where Jimmy Butler plays 30 games in the next few seasons. And
it's
Kevin
true,
does, right? So, what are we talking about? I don't know.
It's just that when Bradley Beal plays, they're not very good.
If the Suns trade Ryan Dunn,
the difference is Jimmy Butler's better.
If the Suns trade Ryan Dunn, I hope Ryan Dunn becomes Kawhi Leonard because they would deserve it. They would so deserve it.
Yeah, I understand what you mean. And I don't even know where I fully stand on this too. And part of that is just a few seconds of Windy loosely tying Kevin Durant's extension to Jimmy Butler at the end of that podcast, which I thought was kind of scary. I don't know the right word to use for that, because he said Kevin Durant does not have an extension. The Phoenix Suns want to extend Kevin Durant, and part of this conversation of trying to trade for Jimmy Butler is related to that. Like, he tied those two things together at the very least. Implication being you trade for Jimmy Butler and now you extend them both. You know, now you're locked in for a few years with the big three of KD, Jimmy Butler, Devin Booker. And, you know, that is how you get in trouble as a team, I think, right? That's how SGA ended up on OKC. And you know, they traded him for Paul George because if you trade for Paul George, you also get Kawhi Leonard. And the Clippers, of course, probably regret that over time. Kawhi Leonard never plays. SGA's top 5 player in the NBA right now. So you can get in trouble when you say, oh, I trade for this one player and I get these two. But there's just something in there, I think, that just stuck out to me that I can't really shake. That I'm concerned. And also, let's be frank, man, I don't know that this team fits right now. Bradley Beal, Devin Booker, Kevin Durant, they should be better when all three of them play. When all three of them play, they have not been excellent. And the idea of being tied to a big three that just does not fully fit together after going all in is just something that really bothers me. Because if they're going to be all in and they have one more lever you could pull that could make the team be better, I don't know. I reject. I'm going to go back and forth on that. I think
that's fine. I reject the notion though that Jimmy is the only lever. He's not the only lever, and the reason we know that is because Brad is not the only problem with this roster. There's a lot of problems with this roster. They could go just upgrading the center position and just getting whatever their version of the Daniel Gafford trade from last year is for Dallas makes a world of difference still to this team for me. It's not Jimmy or bust. And I reject the notion that we should think of it in those terms. The other thing, like a slight appeal on my part, and I understand Suns fans are frustrated with Bradley Beal. They should be. He's been bad. Or at least, not on the court, but he's been disappointing, and he's makes $50 million, so he'll be fine. So I'm not saying you're not allowed to criticize him, but I will do a slight appeal to empathy or empathize on Brad's part, only in the sense that right now I'm uncomfortable with this situation that I think fans and analysts, whatever, are in, where it's like we have to be the body language police too when we watch Brad on the sideline, right? That makes me uncomfortable because last couple games, Brad's not playing, KD's back, the team wins. And it's like every time the camera pans over to Brad, showing him in his flannel and beanie or whatever, sitting there on the bench, he's, if we take him at his word, which is that he has knee swelling and he's injured right now, right? Like he doesn't need to be smiling all the time. He can be really upset with his own inability to live up to expectations on this team right now, right? Like, he should be supportive of his teammates. And I did see him, by the way. I did see him smiling, at some points during the Portland game yesterday. But it's like, I'm uncomfortable with making these huge leaps about internally what is Bradley Beal feeling when truthfully we don't know. I'm not sure anyone knows what Bradley Beal is feeling right now.
Yeah,
and it's
including
entirely...
So whether or not he would...
waive his no trade clause, entirely punt on the idea. Yeah, go to Miami when he has a family that he's currently raising, right? We talked about that on Patreon. It's like Brad might just be frustrated with himself more so than blaming it outwardly on kind of other people right now. And that doesn't make all the problems go away. It doesn't mean that suddenly he's going to be able to stay healthy and play 80 games a year. I don't know that you can automatically just assume that Brad is going to be willing to waive that no trade clause.
Last thing about that I want to get to, and if you're the optimist Suns fan that really likes to stay on the positive side of things, skip ahead a few minutes while I talk about this, but it's if the Suns being involved at all in this trade rumor has like sort of disaster potential to it, I think that Suns fans don't want to probably focus on, and understandably so, including me. I don't really like to think about this, but right now they have two for sure starts: Devin Booker in his prime, Kevin Durant playing like he's in his prime, but at the end of his career. Both of those guys absolutely want to play for winners. They want to play on a team that's competing for championships no matter what. They also have Bradley Beal, who has more control than both of those players when it comes to his own contract because of that no trade clause. In order for the Suns to even have conversations about trading for Jimmy Butler, they have to go to Bradley Beal and Bradley Beal's agent. And I know that's a little weird considering Bradley Beal's agent's son is the CEO of the Suns, but they have to go to them and have conversations about them that could go as far as saying, we don't think you fit here. Do you think you fit here? Or do you want to be traded somewhere else? And that conversation alone, when Bradley Beal spent a lot of time when he came to the Suns talking about how important it was for him to feel like he was recruited, to feel like he was wanted when it comes to playing here, could have an impact on his relationship with the Suns. And if you look at the type of player he was and what the Suns traded to get him from Washington, basically nothing when it comes to star players. Meaning, if he wants to leave and he gets to choose where he goes, there's a world, because of his no trade clause, that the Suns have to trade him in the future because of the conversations they're having with him now. And I know you just talked about not trying to figure out how he feels, but there is a world where this goes poorly and it ends with the Suns getting nothing out of a trade for him, or maybe him not playing very well or not putting the kind of effort that you expect him to put into a game because he doesn't feel like this is a place that he's wanted anymore. And I'm concerned about that because if that starts to happen, he starts to play poorly. He becomes dissatisfied with this team. The Suns have to trade him for something that doesn't necessarily improve the team. That impacts how Devin Booker and Kevin Durant feel about this team. So
yeah, you're saying it would be a domino effect of sorts.
Yes, exactly. All of that to say that if you're the Phoenix Suns and you have the opportunity to potentially trade for Jimmy Butler by trading Bradley Beal, you have to explore it. You have to. Like, I'm sorry to say it, but there's such a delicate balance that they have to strike here with these conversations that they have, whether it be with the Heat, who luckily don't leak very much, thank God, or with Bradley Beal and Bradley Beal's agent and his family, in order to, if it does fall apart and it doesn't work because Jimmy Butler changes his mind, who knows? He's a guy who can change his mind, or the Heat just say, no, absolutely not. We don't want Bradley Beal, period. There's nothing you can do to sweeten that deal enough for us to want him. Cool. Now what? You have to figure out how to do what's best for this team going forward. And obviously you're going to make other trades. You're going to try to find other ways to improve this team. Just make sure, if you're the Suns, to do this with some sort of
grace,
deft hand and grace, in order to not just completely tank the season, because at the very least there's some disaster potential there that I can't help but shake. It's just in there in my head a little bit.
No, you're right. There's certainly a way that this blows up in their face, and they need to take every precaution to make sure that it doesn't. If it did happen, though, what's your best comp? Your best historical comp for the Kevin Durant, Jimmy Butler, Devin Booker big three?
It's pretty fascinating.
For me, and this is kind of speaks to why I'm not willing to go that deep into trading for it.
Mm-hmm.
Remember that Houston team? This is before my time, ultimately, but a lot of people will remember it. That late 90s Houston team, which was just like late 30s Hakeem, late 30s Charles Barkley, and late 30s Clyde Drexler. Did that team win anything?
No.
It's kind of a little bit what it feels like to me.
I know what you mean. Yeah. I get it. It's just an odd one, because what's the comp for the current Suns big three? I guess would be the question. I know Bradley Beal's technically younger, but body wise, Butler and Beal are the same age. They really are the same age. Career wise, I think that counts too. Look, we're gonna cover it as it comes along. There's based on what I heard Wendy say, it sounds like no matter what, which sucks for all of us, by the way, it seems like this could go until the trade deadline. And the Heat honestly seem like a team that might just be willing to say, I don't care, we'll lose him for nothing, or we'll try to tempt him to pick up his player option at the end of all this and see if he's actually willing or can't find the $50 million for the next 2 years that he wants. And he picks up his player option to at least get half of that. So we'll see what ends up happening. We're going to cover it as it comes.
It's not the worst strategy, just quickly speaking on the Heat's perspective, to call his bluff and say, okay, go sign with some other team. Because as has recently been pointed out to me, I hadn't looked at the cap space projections for next summer, but basically the only team with max cap space, or even with more than, say, $10 or $15 million worth of cap space, is going to be the Brooklyn Nets.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe Jimmy and his agent are able to finagle a way out where they can, get a sign and trade going, and then Miami gets something small in return anyway. But otherwise, Miami can just say, okay, you want to go play for the Brooklyn Nets and win 35 games next year? Be our guest. Right? So just another reason that this is not going to be all that easy. And, there are going to be bluffs from both sides, but you can kind of see through it a little bit too. You know what I mean?
Yeah. If the Suns have to pivot, the Nets are currently available. Everyone on the Nets are currently available for trade. I think you all know who we're thinking about for that team. Salary-wise, Dorian Finney-Smith is a player that they could potentially get. And based on the Dennis Schroeder trade, which is the only trade that's happened so far this season, it might not take as much as a lot of people expect in order to get him, because Schroeder was essentially just traded for 2 second-round picks to the Warriors in a trade where it's like, wow, the Suns have that. Not that they necessarily wanted Schroeder, but like that is the type of assets the Suns currently have, and would be willing to part with.
To be fair to Schroeder, I didn't even kind of realize how well he was playing this season. He's averaging 18.4 points.
Yeah.
6.6 assists. He's shooting 39% from deep, 89% from the free throw line.
And he gets to the line, yeah.
Those are that's nothing to sneeze at. Like, the fact that they couldn't get a first-round pick out of that, truthfully, is kind of crazy to me. And we'll see. You know, I think he's an interesting fit on Golden State, too. Obviously not a team that is very pick-and-roll heavy, so I'm going to kind of be curious to see how he fits in. Yeah. But it's a great acquisition for the Warriors, who have kind of been floundering as of late. They've fallen quite a bit in the Western Conference standings.
It'll be like the first player they've had with a quick first step in a while, outside of like Kuminga, who doesn't know what to do when he gets there. So, yeah, I don't know. They can also aggregate him. There's a rule that if you make a trade before a certain date, today actually, that you can aggregate players in future trades. So they can technically now combine their salary that they have with Dennis Schroeder and make a trade to another team for a star player, like, say, Jimmy Butler, for example, if they're willing to put Wiggins and Kuminga and Schroeder into a trade. That's how they get there. So the Nets, keep an eye on the Nets roster. Blazers, Wizards, Pelicans. I think
is an interesting one.
Pelicans is the new one team that was sort of added to this list.
How about this report from Bobby Marks today? If the New Orleans Pelicans decide to trade Zion Williamson, they could expect to acquire expiring contracts and perhaps a future first-round pick. Do you buy that? Is that posturing, or is that actually
No,
Zion's?
I believe that.
I
mean, who would want him at this point?
Okay, but maybe a first-round pick and expiring contracts, that's Zion's
He never
value.
plays. How long is his career? You know, I get it.
It's just kind of crazy. I
mean,
mean,
can't
what a fall from grace.
reliably build a team around him at this point, because you just know he's not going to be able to remain healthy. Not a ton there, I think, for the Suns. There's still not a lot of big men available. I think we keep looking at Valanciunas, but it's tough for the Suns to get to that level of salary without Grayson. It's impossible, basically, without Grayson or Nurkic, and you have other things to potentially solve with those guys. So keep an eye on it. Keep sending me trades. People are sending me trades and DMs, tagging me and stuff online, which I appreciate, those fake trades. And then, of course, if anything happens, we'll be ready to cover it as quickly as possible. One last thing, I wanted to read a statement from the Phoenix Suns that they just posted today. We are deeply saddened by the passing of Suns legend Dick Van Arsdale, the original Sun and a member of our Ring of Honor, the first selection in the expansion draft to build the Suns roster and the scorer of the first points in team history. Van Arsdale was a cornerstone of the Suns organization. He earned 3 All-Star selections, was a member of the team's first trip to the NBA Finals in 1976, and retired as the franchise's all-time leading scorer in 1977. Beloved throughout the Suns organization and fan base, Van Arsdale held several positions with the team, including broadcaster and front office executive, following his 12-year NBA career. Our thoughts are with his friends and family, including his twin brother and Suns teammate Tom, during this difficult time. Dick Van Arsdale, first Phoenix Suns player ever, first player to score, passed away recently, and the Suns had a really nice tribute to him on that they posted online on their website, on Twitter, stuff like that. Really cool to see that. Very sad to hear about his passing. Obviously, neither of us were alive to see his career, but his personality and what he did for the Phoenix Suns endured, obviously including working post-retiring for the Phoenix Suns throughout all that time. He was just a guy that was around for a long time in Phoenix, and somebody who had a long-lasting impact on people that were around and watching basketball back then, and on the organization as a whole. So we're definitely thinking about him today. What do you think, Sam?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, thoughts obviously with his family, and for a guy who was, as it says, the original Sun, right? So, yeah, I was not alive for Dick Van Arsdale's career, but that didn't mean that I didn't see all the highlights on YouTube growing up, or on Suns broadcasts. So, everything from the first basket in franchise history, all the way up to, as it said in the statement, that 1976 finals run against the Celtics, where he continued to play, into his 30s, having an important role with the team. So, yeah, a big loss for the franchise today.
All right, that's all we got this week. Thank you, everyone, for listening, and we'll be back with the Patreon episode midweek, patreon.com/thetimeline. Promo code OSOGOOD, OSOGOOD, for 80% off your first month. So check that out.
Promo code OSOTraded for Jimmy Butler if Mike gets his way.
I didn't even say that. You can't put that on me. You can't. I don't know. Maybe I would do it. I don't know. I'd have to really think hard about it, though. That's for sure. I definitely want to keep at least one of those guys, though, because, God, it would be awful to get rid of both. But we appreciate everyone for listening. Yes, we'll be back with that one. And then, next week we'll be previewing a Christmas Day game. I'm not sure if I'm looking forward to that or not, but we'll see when we get there. Thanks, everyone.